Hilchis Tumas Tzara'as Perek Shlishi. So we learned that if a person has a nega, because he has an area on his skin that's white, at least as white as a krum beitza, and that area is the size of a gris, so that's a nega. And then what's that? That's enough of a nega to have hesger. Then there's 3 simoni tuma which are cause them to have echlet, and those simoni tuma are either a seir lovan or a michya or a pisoyin. So b'negei seir lovan the Rambam discussed in Perek Beis. Here b'negei michya the Rambam will discuss here in Perek Gimel, and pisoyin the Rambam will discuss in Perek Dalet. Now the size of a nega has to be at least the size of a gris hakilki, which the Rambam said before was 6 cyrus by 6 cyrus. That's the size of a nega, the minimal size of a nega. Now, Perek Shlisha, Eina Michya Simen Tuma, Ashetia Ka'adashim Rubas Ayes Alzeh. So this Michya, which is within the nega, Michya again is healthy skin, which is within the nega, has to be the size of an Adashim Rubas, a square lentil. Ayes Alzeh. The Kamish Yura, what's the size of Adashim Rubas? Keditzmichas Arba Cyrus. The amount of space that would take to grow 4 cyrus, which means Shtayim Erech, Shtayim Rechav. It should be a square area, 2 hairs by 2 hairs. Vuhu, but in order to michya to be matame, shetia hamichya be'emtza beheres. The michya has to be be'emtza beheres. Beheres makefes esa mikol tzat. The michya has to be inside the beheres, and the beheres completely surrounds this michya. And that's number 1. And also vihi yiseira la michya reichev shtei cyrus ayeser. Because the michya can't be towards the end of the beheres. There has to be at least 2 cyrus in between the michya and the end of the beheres. But if the michya was on the side of the beheres, wasn't inside the beheres, it doesn't have to be necessarily in the middle. It has to be inside the beheres to the extent where there is at least 2 cyrus of the beheres outside the michya. Is ain't a siman tumah, that's not a siman tumah. So let's go again. Now the minimal size, and the Rambam is going to touch this again later, clear. The minimal size of a beheres is a size of 6 cyrus by 6 cyrus. The minimal size of a michya is 2 cyrus by 2 cyrus. Now the din is that this michya has to be b'teicha beheres, and it has to be that there should be 2 cyrus of the beheres outside of the michya. So the michya should be away from the end of the beheres at least 2 cyrus. So maybe it'll come out, the Rambam teaches clearly that if you have an exact size of a beheres which is 6 cyrus by 6 cyrus, and you have an exact size of a michya which is 2 cyrus by 2 cyrus, so then it would only be tameh if it would be absolutely in the middle. So in other words, the michya is exactly in the middle, 2 cyrus by 2 cyrus, and the beheres is 6 cyrus by 6 cyrus. So in the middle, there's 2 cyrus that the michya is away from the end of the beheres. There's 2 cyrus outside the michya which is still beheres. Mashenkin, if you have a michya which will be, let's say, 2 cyrus by 2 cyrus, but they'll be towards one side of the beheres. So maybe there'll only be 1 row of cyrus in between the michya and the end of the beheres. So then it won't be tummy. That's this din. So in other words, we learned the size of a beheres has to be 6 cyrus by 6 cyrus. The size of a michya has to be 2 cyrus by 2 cyrus. That michya has to be completely surrounded by the beheres, and it also has to be off the end of the beheres at least by 2 cyrus. Now, hoisa mifuzeres, if this michya wasn't one piece that was a michya, but it was spread out, there was healthy skin the size of a mustard seed in one place. All these little pieces of michya are inside the beheres, and legabi that is it's doing, in other words, it's inside the beheres, it's surrounded by beheres, and it's inside the beheres, but it's not in one place, this michya. Einan mitzdarf from the kadasha. That's not a tzira for the kadasha. Ad sheyeh b'mokim echad, and be'emtza beheres kadasha meruba yaseh. You have to have an adasha meruba, a square adasha or larger than a square adasha, and it should be inside the beheres. Inside the beheres, and as we said, 2 cyrus away from the end of the beheres. Halacha beis. Hamichya mitame b'chol mara. So b'neged in the goyim there was maras negoyim. Mashenkin, the color of the michya is not negea. Hamichya mitame b'chol mara ben shoyim mara michya odoim oishacher iloven. We're talking about it has to be healthy skin. The healthy skin could be reddish, could be darkish, could be white. V'hu shali aloven the arba hamara should be arnu. It can't be white to the extent where it's going to be like a mara a matter of a nega. Masha'ikein, as long as it's healthy skin, regardless of what color it is, as long as it's not the color of a nega, so then it qualifies as a michya. Halacha Gimel. Eina michya simen tumah at shetia begufa shel baheres. It has to be in the baheres itself. Whereas the michya is in the baheres, and not in something which may be in the baheres, but it's not in the baheres itself, which is similar to the halachas we learned when we get the seir loven, that the seir loven has to be coming out from the baheres itself. Ketzat. Baheres shehoye be'emtzo shchin, a michva, a michya, a boyak. So we learned this before already. Whereas you have a shchin is that the skin came off as a result of a wound or as a result of some type of other illness, as opposed to a burn. That's what a shchin is. A michva is the skin came off as a result of a burn. Now michya over here means michyas hashchin or michyas hamichva. It means that it started healing. In other words, you have that the skin came off and it's still a wound, and then there's the beginning of the process of the healing, which we'll learn that there is a metzias of a nega in michyas hashchin and michyas hamichva. So there's a metzias of a nega in them. But over here, this michya, which is healthy skin, which is in the nega, so that healthy skin, that michya can be in a shchin which is in the nega. That's what we're learning over here. Beheres shahoye b'emtzo, you have a beheres, which a beheres is the nega, the skin that's white, and inside that area where the skin is white, you have a shchin, a michva, you have a wound which came from not a burn, a michva, a wound that came from a burn. A michya means that these wounds started healing. A boyak, or a discolored, which is not the madrega of a tzara'as, of a nega. It's a darker color. It's not the madrega of a tzara'as. And v'hamichya, and now you have a michya, but that michya is not in the baheres. The michya is b'teich hashchin, a b'teich hamichva, a b'teich michyason, a b'teich habeyak. So again, you have an area which is a baheres. Now inside this baheres, you have this shchin or michva or michyas hashchin, michyas hamichva or a boyak, and now in that boyak or in that shchin or michva or michyas hashchin, michyas hamichva, you have over here a michya. A michya means healthy skin. Is aval pisha hamichya be'emtza baheres. Lepel, this michya, this healthy skin is in the middle of the baheres. But nevertheless, ain't a siman tumah. That's not a siman tumah. Why? Mipnei shi b'teich hashchin eya michva michyason b'teich habeyak. Because you need that the healthy skin should be on the area which is the nega. Masha'inkin, if you have an area within the nega, like so to speak, an island within the nega, that's a shchin or a michva or these other things, and on that you have the michya. So even though the pale, it ends up the michya is b'teich habeheres, it's inside the baheres, but it's not on the baheres. So therefore, it's not a siman tumah. Pnei b'teich hashchin b'teich hamichva. Aval pisha michya be'emtza baheres ain't a siman tumah. Pnei b'teich hashchin eya michva michyason b'teich habeyak, and it's not in the baheres. V'chein, another situation which we also had when the seir loven, you have it is in the baheres. However, around the area of the michya, you have a baheres, and then in this baheres you have this michya, which l'chura should be a siman tumah. But on the other hand, this michya is surrounded by a shchin or a michva, or in these cases, that's what he's saying. V'chein imhikev hashchin a michyasi, the shchin or the michyas hashchin, or v'hamichva a michyasa, or the michva or the michyas hamichva, or v'haboyak, and they were makiv, they encircled as hamichya, this michya, oy shenich nismach echemem lemichya metzida, or there's a row, there's a line of shchin or michva, etc., which is on one side of this michya, on one side, cholak echad mehem, es hamichya v'nichnas l'teicha, or one of them went through the michya. So therefore, this michya is divided into two. The michya is one half on one side of this shchin or michva, and the other side, and the other part of the michya is on the other side. Is ein a siman tumah. V'areze ki baheres she'ein ba siman, as if it doesn't have a siman, v'yasker, and it should be yasker. So let's say it again. You have a metzias, you have to have a baheres, which in this baheres you have a michya. A michya is healthy skin. Now the healthy skin has to be in the baheres. If you have within the baheres the shchin or the michva, etc., and in that there is this michya, it's nothing. Now if you have a baheres, and in the baheres there is a michya, and this michya is surrounded by shchin or mikveh, etc. So again, it's nothing because lepel, the michya is not within the baharis. It's surrounded by the shchin or mikveh. Now, Nachmer, even if it is within the baharis and it's surrounded by the baharis, but on one side of it, there's a shchin or mikveh which is separating this michya from the baharis. There's a shchin or a mikveh which is separating this shchin, this michya from the baharis only on one side, or even if you have part of the michya, which you have a row of shchin or mikveh going through this michya, is not a siman tumah. In order there should be a siman tumah, you have to have a michya which is in the baharis, and it's not in the shchin or mikveh, and it's not surrounded by the shchin or mikveh, and it's not even next to the shchin or mikveh, and it's not divided by the shchin or mikveh. It has to be a michya in the baharis. That's this din, and that's a michya. Now, holchul mashchin a mikveh a boyek shehoya tachas hamichya. You had over here you had a baharis. And in this baharis, you had the shchin or the mikvah, etc. So that caused that the michya is basar chai, which is the healthy skin, shouldn't be metami because it was either on the shchin or the mikvah, or was surrounded by the shchin or the mikvah, or was next to the shchin or the mikvah. And now this shchin and mikvah, which was causing the michya not to be metami, left, no longer there. All these cases where the michvah caused it that the michya shouldn't be metame, and v'nimtzas now lepel is hamichya levada b'techa baharis. Now you have the michya in the baharis b'seif shavua rishon, b'seif shavua sheni is arezeh yachlet. So then it's arezeh yachlet im leholcholahem and yifter. But if nothing happened, so in other words, you have this situation where you have a nega, and then you have a michya in the nega, and lepel because of this michvah or shchin, etc., it's not becoming tummy. So if these things went away, so then it becomes tummy and yachlet. But if it doesn't go away, so then it's as if it wasn't there, and as if the michya wasn't there. And therefore, just like a regular nega that you had 2 weeks and didn't develop any simoni tumah, so it's yifter. After 2 weeks is yifter. So al derech zeh, this nega, which has a michya in it, but it has all these reasons that this michya is not matame, so then it's yifter. So again, if these things go away, so then it becomes tame. If they don't go away, so then it's yifter. Now just to make notice that over here the Rambam, when the Rambam says holcholahem, he writes also if they left shahoyu tachas hamichya. B'negeh sadis lovan, we didn't learn that if they went from under the sadis lovan will be matame. And the reason is because the sadis lovan have to come from the baharis. The sadis lovan has to come from the baharis. So mainly, if the sadis lovan were coming from the shchin or the mikvah, so the fact that the shchin or mikvah is going to go away is not going to cause that the sadis lovan will become a tummy. The sadis lovan won't be a simas tumah. Only if you have a shchin or a mikvah on the side of the sadis lovan, and they were causing that the sadis lovan, which were coming from the baharis, shouldn't be matame. So then, when they go away, so then it is matame. But the sadis lovan that came from the baharis, that came from the mikvah, so then there won't be a siman tumah because lepel the sadis lovan didn't come from the baharis. Mashenkin over here is saying that even if the mikvah that was under the michya went away, and now under the michya is regular skin, so then it is tummy. And the reason is because a michya doesn't have to come after the baharis. The siman of a michya is not only came after the baharis, like the Rambam will say in the next halacha. That's what the Rambam says, halacha dalet, hamichya siman tumah leila. Michya is always a siman tumah. Ben shekodma michya is ha-baharis, ben shekodma baharis is ha-michya. V'shali nemer ba v'hi hafcha. It doesn't say v'hi hafcha, so therefore you can have a chatimtza where you have a michya, and then around this michya developed this baharis, and the baharis didn't, like there wasn't a baharis, and from the baharis came a michya. As long as there was a regular skin, and then the skin created a baharis, and in this baharis there's a michya. So mele, that's a siman tumah. It doesn't have to be that there was a full baharis, and then after the full baharis it became a michya. Zeh shenamer b'teira v'hi hafcha seir lovan u'michya basar chai basei. So it sounds like you need both. Side that there should be seir lovan and side that there should be michya basar chai basei. Ein it tzarich l'shneim l'seir u'lemichya. Ela kol echad mehem siman tumah. So why does it say it in such a lashon as if they're going together? V'hi hafcha seir lovan u'michya basar chai basei. V'linamar Seir Lovan Imam Michya, the reason why the Torah wrote them together, Elalitin Shir LeMichya, to tell us that what is the shir of the Michya? The shir of the Michya is that it should be Kedei Lekabel Seir Lovan. Now Seir Lovan has to be two siders. So even though Be'emes, the two siders don't have to be together, but Lepel, since Seir Lovan is two siders, that's how the Torah is being meramis to us, that the shir of a Michya is that it should be two siders by two siders. So therefore, the number Seir Lovan na Michya, Lelitin Shir LeMichya, Shatia Kedei Lekabel Seir Lovan, she shtei siders. So the shir of a Michya is shtei siders by shtei siders. Halacha hey. Baharas kigris mitzuntzum. You have a baharas which is kigris, which we said is 6 siders by 6 siders, and exactly. Ubemtzo, there's a michya ka'adasha mitzuntzamos, and there's a michya ka'adasha which is the size of 2 by 2, 2 siders by 2 siders. Exact. This is exactly 6 by 6, and this is exactly 2 by 2. So the din is areza muchlat. So it's muchlat. Now in the smata baharas, the baharas became somewhat smaller. Eish in the smata michya, or the michya became somewhat smaller, is tar, because you don't have the shear. You don't have the shear of the baharas, or you don't have the shear of the michya. V'chein im rav sa michya shebeteich baharazu. If the michya that was in this baharas became bigger, is also tar. Why? Because as we learned before, the baharas has to be separated from the end. I mean, the michya has to be separated from the end of the baharas with 2 siders. She'ena baharas matami b'michya achatia yiseira la michya reiv shtei siders mikol tzad. There has to be 2 siders of the baharas outside the michya. So if you have an exact size of a baharas, and then you have a michya which is also the exact size, now the michya became bigger, so now there's not enough space between the michya and the end of the baharas. Now hoisa achatia yiseira la michya reiv shtei siders mikol tzad. Now hoisa hamichya pchusa mikadasha. If the michya was originally pchusa mikadasha, and the michya became larger, Achanasis kadasha is hareza muchlat. Because you have a baharas, the right size of the baharas, and then you have inside you have a michya which is too small. Now it became bigger, so it's beseder. Nismata hamichya mimasha hoisa. Now what happens if the michya becomes smaller? Esha holchala is hareza k'mesha hoisa. The enkan siman tuma. So in other words, you had the mashal of michya which was not the right size, and it became smaller. So it wasn't tummy. In other words, he wasn't muchlat. He has a michya which is not the right size, and so he's not muchlat. And on the other hand, now this michya became smaller. Now there's a svara to say that since the michya became smaller, so let the baharas be metame al pasasa. It became bigger. Because since if the michya became smaller, so it means the baharas became bigger. So l'chur it's pasasa. The answer is no, that pasasa is only when it's pasasa towards the outside, not towards the inside. So therefore, the fact that nismata hamichya can't cause a siman tumah, that's not a hechlet, legabi the din of a pisoid. Nismata hamichya mashahoisa eshaholcha, so the din is arezik mishahoisa, and therefore ve'en kan siman tumah. Halacha vav. Baharis yiseirig mikigris. You have a baharis which is larger than a kigris. Uba michya yiseirig mikadash, and you have a michya inside this baharis which is larger than a kadasha. V'rabu eishin ismatu, the michya became bigger, the baharas became bigger, or they became smaller, but in a way that you still have the share of the baharas, which is kigris, and you still have a share of a michya, which is kadasha, and you also have a share where there's the 2 siders between the end of the michya and the end of the baharas, and the baharas. So memela nachmal, baharas yiseirim kigris, uba michya yiseirim kadasha, v'rabu eishin ismatu tamei, ubelvad, shall you smite baharas mikigris? The baharas cannot become smaller than kigris. That's one tanai. And v'lei tismite hamichya mikadasha, and the michya cannot become smaller than a kadasha in order for it to remain tummy. And also v'lei tikrav hamichya the sefer baharas bepachas mikteitz michas teisayros k'misha b'yarnu. And you have to make and also in order for it to remain tummy, it has to be that the michya is separated from the end of the baharas at least by 2 siders. Halacha zayin. Baharas kigris, ubaser chai ka'adasha yeser makifa mibachutz. So you have a baharas which is the size of a gris, and it's surrounded by basar chai, which is the size of adasha yeser. That's surrounding the baharas. And now you have a baharas shniya, makefes is a basar chai, and then you have another baharas which is surrounding this basar chai. So in other words, you have baharas in the middle. That's what a size of a baharas, the size of a baharas. And then you have basar chai, which is the michya, which is surrounding that Baharis, which is the inside, and then you have another Baharis, which is surrounding the Basar Chai, which surrounds the inside Baharis. So the din is, Hariya Baharis Apnimis Lahasgar. The Baharis Apnimis doesn't have any Simoni Tuma. No, if it would be Noila Damichi inside, or would be Pasasa towards the outside, it would become Tamei. But at this point in time, the Baharis Apnimis is Hezger. Shari'im Basimin Tuma. Because the Basar Chai, which is outside the Baharis, is not a Siman Tuma from the Baharis, which is inside. However, Baharis Achitzena, the outside Baharis is Lahachlit. Why? Shari'ah Michya Bemtzo. Because inside you have the Michya. So this person is Tomei Lahachlit because of the outside Baharis, which has the Basar Chai inside of it. So even though this Basar Chai has Baharis inside of that, that doesn't change it. The pill, there's Basar Chai in this outside Baharis, and Mela, so it's a Siman Tumah. Now, in the Smayat Basar Chai should be named, that Basar Chai, which was separating the outside Baharis and the inside Baharis, went away. Whether it went away from the inside, in other words, so the Baharis, the inside Baharis started expanding towards that Basar Chai, or it started expanding from the outside. In other words, the outside Baharis started going further inside. So then is Arishteim Kebaharis Achas. Now they both have a din of one Baharis, Shein Bas Siman Tumah. So they become one Baharis, which has no Siman Tumah, and then you have to deal with it as you would deal with a Baharis that has no Siman Tumah. Now obviously he would have been Mukhlat originally, so he would have different dinim. We're talking about, that was originally the Metzias, and that's what happened. So the Pele, at this point in time, it's a Baharis which has no Siman Tumah. Now the Chur in this case where you say that it extended, let's say you had an inside Baharis, then around it was Michya, and that inside Baharis extended towards the outside. Now L'chura, since you had this Baharis, you had originally this Baharis, and this Baharis didn't have a Siman Tumah, but now there was Pisoyin. It's extended towards the outside. So L'chura, since it extended towards the outside, so that should be Machlid, the inside Baharis. L'chura, there was a Pisoyin. It was the outside Baharis that went towards the inside, so that's not called a Pisoyin. And its Siman Tumah went away, because now it's no longer Basar Chai. Masha'inki, the outside Baharis, the inside Baharis, L'chura, there was a Pisoyin. So on that, the Ramar brings from Pirush Mishnayos that over here is a Chiddush, that even though normally Pisoyin, towards the outside is Pisoyin, but since the Basar Chai, that was between the inside Baharis and the outside Baharis, was like inside the outside Baharis, so you cannot Pisoyin to that Basar Chai, which is inside a Baharis. It's a Chiddush. Whereas normally, when you have a nega, and this nega extends towards the outside, that's a Siman Tumah. L'chura, that inside nega, we called it a nega, the inside was a nega, which was Hezger, which didn't have a Siman Tumah, and now that inside Baharis, now L'chura extended towards the outside, but nevertheless, since the outside that it extended to was to Basar Chai, which was inside the outside Baharis, so that causes that it shouldn't have a din of Pisoyin, Memela, so it's not a Siman Tumah. Halacha Ches. Baharis shehoisa bereish aver min ha'evarim. You have a baharis on the top of one of the evarim, and v'hamichya be'emtza baharis and bereish aver. On top of the aver, on top of this limb, you have a baharis. You have a michya on the top of this limb. Now, normally we say when you have a baharis, and the baharis is the right size, it's the size of kigris, and on top in that you have a michya, which is also the right size of kadasha. So it's a Siman Tumah. But now there's a new din that if it's on top of an aver, on the tip of an aver, so it's not a tumah. Ain't a Siman Tumah. Why? Because since there's a michya in the middle of the nega, so you have a nega, and that nega is also going towards the sides of the tip of the aver. You have a tip of an aver. On top of the aver, you have a nega, and that nega doesn't only remain on a flat surface. In other words, the nega is going towards the sides of the tip of this aver. And now you have a michya, which is on top of this tip. So by looking at this michya, you don't really see the entire nega completely. Whereas Vaistos is brought down, the Mishnah says that if we're dealing with mashal and nega, which this simon is going to be a sar lovan, so over there or whatever, it'll be a different sar lovan or pisoyin. So over there, you could see the entire nega even when it's on the tip of an aver. Because lapel, even though they were going towards different sides, but lapel, you could focus and see the entire nega, which is going down, let's say on the tip of a finger. So you have a nega on the tip of a finger and it extends towards the size of the finger. So you can take a look at the entire nega at the same time. But if on the tip of this finger there's also a michya, so that michya, Vaistois, prevents the kohen from being able to see the entire nega with the michya together, as he states. Let's start again. You have a beheres which is on the tip of one of the limbs, which one of them could be a finger. On top of the aver, on top of the tip of this aver, there is a michya, which is the right size. But nevertheless, ain't a simatum. It's not a simatum. Why? The michya divides the nega. V'nimtza miktsasi shefeh v'yered mikan, miktsasi shefeh v'yered mikan. So like there's the part of the nega which is on this side of the michya, and there's part of the nega which is on the other side of the nega. V'namar b'negoim v're'ohu hakein. So which means sheyia re'ya hanega kula kachas. So you should be able to see the entire thing together. Since over here you have a michya on top, and Lepel, even though he's looking on one side of the michya and is looking on the other side of the michya, but Lepel, since there's a michya in between, he's not seeing kuli ka'achas. That's not called seeing kuli ka'achas because he's seeing it on two sides of the michya. That's not called kuli ka'achas. Again, if it would be just a nega, it would have another siman tumah, that would be fine. But over here, since there's a michya on top, so he's seeing on this side of the michya, on the other side of the michya, felt in reya hanega kuli ka'achas. That's this did. First of all, Rashi, it's bois yadayim v'raglayim, the tips of the fingers, the hands of the feet, and Rashi is naim, the tip of the ear, and knows any side of, knows anything of the on the tip, knows the tip of the ear, of any part of the entire round area around the ear, and also v'reisha chetim of the nose, v'reisha atera of the aver, and v'rashi dadim shel isha, the roshim of the woman's breasts. Avol Rashi Dadim Shalish is that's considered more flat, and therefore that's not considered a roish, which you're going to say is prevents the kohen from being able to see the nega from both sides of this michya, of the healthy flesh, and also v'hayaboiles v'adildulim. If a person has a wart, dildulim means he has flesh which is like hanging from him. So in other words, again, it's not like in a flat area, l'chura. So that would be the same din of Rashi Yivarim. But nevertheless, a nega, which is in Yabelis, or dildulim amitame b'michya. And the reason is because since it's not normally in a way that you are not able to see it, because it's not normal that there should be a Yabelis, and it's not normal that there should be dildulim, so therefore it's not included in that p'tur. That's what it's brought down. I'm not sure. I don't understand so clearly. The lechura, since sof kol sof it says v're'o hakein, that he has to see it completely. So why should it be that since these things are normally not in such a matzav, so therefore even though lepel is felt in v're'o hakein, nevertheless it's matami. But that's this din. This din is nachamol. So if you have a nerga which is b'rashi ivar, any of the rashi ivar, and lepel, this nega has on the tip of it a michya. So normally a michya in a nega is a siman tumah. But since this lapel, this michya is on the tip of this aver, and lapel that causes that the kohen should have to see the nega from one side of this michya, and on the other side of the michya, felt in v're'o ka'achas, felt in re'o kula ka'achas, and therefore this michya is not matami. This michya is not matami. And except for saying yabelis and dildulim, even though the churetz in the same matzav, but nevertheless, that michya, a nega in yabelis or dildulim, which would have a michya on its tip, would be matami. Halacha tes v'chol rashi yivarim elu. We just said that the rashi yivarim aren't matami. That's only if the top of those rashi yivarim are not kigris. So mele, in order for the baharis to be able to see the baharis, you have to look not only on the tip of the aver, but you'll also have to look on the sides of the aver, the way they come down. And therefore, since there's a michya on top, and now you're looking on the side, so it's not rei kuli kachas. Masha'enkin, if the tip of it itself is kigris, chol rashi yivar mele showing came on yeshiv kigris, whereas the tip of it was bigger, and therefore the top of it itself is kigris, is metamin kinagoyim. Then it is metamin kinagoyim. Avim hoyu agulim, but if they weren't like, there was no flat surface on the top, but they were round, the roundish, the tips, let's say the tip of the finger was roundish, there was no flat surface on the top of the tip of the finger, they were roundish, kirei brias b'nei adam, and therefore there's no real size of a kegris on the tip of the finger because they're round. They come to a point in their roundness, so to speak. And now the rest of the gris is like going down on the sides of the finger. So then it's tehir. Ketzad. Beheres kegris b'reish chotme. If you have in the tip of the nose, there's a beheres kegris, a b'reish etzboi, or on the head of the finger, and v'shefas elach ve'elach. So you have the beheres kegris, but lapel, the tip of the nose is not a kegris. The tip of the nose is less than a gris. And therefore the gris is going on all sides, going down on the sides of the finger and the sides of the nose. So then it's toshnem v'ro'o akein. So achirei kulik yachas. He has to see it all together. And since he's seeing it, not seeing it all together, because there's the michya on the tip of the nose, and then the rest of the tzara'as is going down on the different sides of the nose. So then that's not considered re'eh or kulik yachas.